On a cold, rainy night in November 1971, a man in a business suit walked to the back of an airliner, lowered a stairway built into its tail, and stepped out into the darkness over the forests of Washington state. He was carrying $200,000 and a parachute. Below him were thousands of square miles of black, freezing wilderness. No one ever saw him again. And more than 50 years later, the FBI still cannot tell you his name. It began that afternoon at the airport in Portland, Oregon. A man in a dark suit and a thin black tie paid cash for a one-way ticket on Northwest Orient Airlines, Flight 305, a short hop north to Seattle. He gave his name as Dan Cooper. Years later, a newspaper would misprint that name as D.B. Cooper, and the mistake would stick forever. But on that day, he was simply a calm, unremarkable passenger who took the very last row, ordered a bourbon, and lit a cigarette. Nobody gave him a second look. Shortly after takeoff, he handed a folded note to a flight attendant. She assumed it was a phone number and slipped it into her pocket. He leaned over and said quietly, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." He opened his briefcase just enough to show her a tangle of wires, a battery, and red cylinders. Whether it was ever real, no one knows. It was never found. If quiet, unsolved cases like this are your kind of story, this is the channel for them. Consider subscribing. Stay with me, because the next 4 hours would become one of the strangest crimes in American history. His demands were precise. $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, 2 main, 2 reserve, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle. The plane held for nearly 2 hours over Puget Sound, while on the ground, the airline gathered 10,000 unmarked bills, and the FBI photographed every serial number. The other passengers were told only that there was a small mechanical problem. They had no idea a hijacking was unfolding around them. At 5:45, Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma and taxied to a dark, distant stretch of runway, exactly as Cooper had asked. A single airline employee carried the money and the parachutes to the plane. Then he released all 36 passengers, free and unharmed, along with 2 of the flight attendants. Once they were gone, he gave the pilots their next orders: take off again and fly south toward Mexico City. He had very particular instructions for that second flight. Stay under 10,000 feet. Keep the landing gear down and the wing flaps low so the jet would fly slow, barely 100 miles an hour, and leave the cabin unpressurized. Only 5 people were now aboard: Cooper, 1 flight attendant, and the 3-man cockpit crew. He told the attendant to join the pilots, pull the curtain, and not look back. Her last sight of him was a man calmly tying the bag of money around his waist. At around 8 o'clock, a warning light flashed in the cockpit. The rear stairs had opened in mid-air. A short while later, the tail of the plane bobbed sharply, as if a great weight had just left it. Somewhere over the dark forests of southwest Washington, in rain, in near-freezing wind, on a moonless night, Dan Cooper had jumped. 2 fighter jets were shadowing the airliner. Not one of their pilots saw a thing. The jet flew on and landed in Reno, Nevada, just after 11, with its rear air stair still hanging open. Police and FBI agents surrounded it, braced for a standoff. They climbed aboard to find the cabin empty. The money was gone, the parachutes were gone, and the man called Dan Cooper had simply vanished into the night. What followed was one of the largest manhunts in FBI history. Hundreds of soldiers and agents combed the forests and rivers of the suspected landing zone. They searched on foot, from helicopters, even from submarines in a nearby lake. They found nothing. No parachute, no usable trail, and almost none of the money. No trace of the man at all. The case was given a code name, Norjack, and it would stay open for the next 45 years. Cooper left only a few things behind in his seat: 8 cigarette butts, a few fingerprints that matched no one, and a cheap black clip-on tie. In 2009, an independent team examined that tie under an electron microscope and found something strange clinging to it: particles of pure titanium and rare earth elements. It led to speculation that Cooper might have worked in aerospace, chemicals, or metalworking. Though the finding was never peer-reviewed, and never an official FBI conclusion. Like every other clue, it pointed everywhere and nowhere. Then, 9 years later, the case cracked open again. In 1980, an 8-year-old boy on a family camping trip was raking a sandy riverbank on the Columbia River when his hands uncovered 3 rotting bundles of $20 bills. The serial numbers matched. It was Cooper's ransom, $5,800 of it, soft and decayed, but still banded together. It was the first and only piece of the money ever found, and where it sat in the sand only deepened the mystery, because the science said it had arrived there years after the hijacking, not days. Over the years, the FBI examined more than 1,000 serious suspects. A Vietnam veteran who copied the crime almost exactly months later, a former airline employee who loved bourbon, a retired pilot who looked like the sketch and faked his own death. One by one, they were investigated. One by one, the evidence, and in several cases DNA, failed to tie any of them to that tie left on seat 18 East. Each promising lead dissolved back into the same question: who was he? And the biggest question of all has never been answered: did he live? Some agents were certain no one could survive that jump, at night in the rain, in dress shoes and a trench coat. Others believed Cooper slept in his own bed that night and quietly disappeared into an ordinary life. Only $5,800 of the money ever surfaced. The rest, more than $190,000, has never surfaced in circulation anywhere. In 2016, after 45 years, the FBI quietly suspended the case. It remains the only unsolved act of air piracy in American aviation history. The man left behind a tie, a few bills in the sand, and a name that was never even his. So what do you think happened to Dan Cooper? Did he survive the jump, or did the mystery end that night in the forest? Tell me in the comments, and if you want more cases the world gave up on, subscribe to Ash and Alibi. Because some files are closed, they are not always solved.